All right, good morning and welcome everyone to today's meeting. This is Filecoin Core Devs number 41. Today is April 21st, 2022, and this is meeting 1 of 2 that we will have today. As usual, we're going to do a quick run through of updates from each of the implementation teams. Some of the implementation teams are traveling at the moment, so they may not be able to join us for this meeting to provide their updates. But updates are pretty standard from last week. Most teams are still pretty heads down working on FVM implementation. We'll also give quick updates from the Filecoin Foundation and introduce Parth Shah, who is going to be helping with some network security going forward. We will briefly touch on the V16 Skyer network upgrade and some of the changing timeline dynamics. And then we're hoping to do 2 presentations at the end of this call. The first one, Will is going to present on the indexer advertisement protocol proposal that was just added to the FIPS repo. And Maxim, if he is able to join us, is going to walk us through his team's proposal for node state compaction and some of the data querying that they're hoping to do. With that, we can jump right in. And Lee, do you want to kick us off with updates from the Forest team?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, for Forest, mostly we're still helping with the FVM testing infrastructure. So most of our team is working on the issues at the built-in actors repo, and we have completed, I believe, 50 tasks out of 100 something. David might be able to give the exact number in the chat. But apart from that, that's what the mostly the focus of the team has been. Apart from that, we are not focused on anything else at the moment. Yeah, that's mostly our update from the Forest team. Any questions or comments from anybody?
No questions from me, but just to say that your new wiki format is actually a really helpful reference point so that I can grab all of these updates. So I'm going to share it with everyone else too, in case they feel so inspired to do the same.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, cool. So I see that Maxim is not with us yet. Is there another member of the Fuhan team who'd like to give updates? Otherwise, I would be happy to fill in the gaps. All right, sounds like it's me. So Maxim sent over updates just this morning, so apologies that they're not in, but it seems like the team is mostly focused on CLI enhancements, trying to match the Lotus code base with the number of messages that can be sent, and also making some enhancements to the Fuhan market module as well, or excuse me, miner module. If there are questions for the Fuhan team, I know that's not a very detailed overview, but I'd be happy to capture them and make sure that they're able to get back to you and answer them. Oh, sorry. All right. Otherwise, I don't believe we have anybody from the Lotus team. Is that correct? All right. Looks like no. So as before, the Lotus team delivered a new release candidate. They also have a new method for delivering updates in the Lotus dev channel on Filecoin project Slack. So if you're looking to stay up to date with the latest release versions, as well as any other sort of enhancements or features that they've released to the community, I would highly recommend you take a look there. Sorry, one moment, it looks like someone is just joining us. Otherwise, they've also been working on implementing Boost, which is the preferred Lotus market implementation or market module for community users. And of course, they continue to be pretty heads down on FVM implementation and audits alongside of the Forest team. Any questions that you'd like me to pass on to the Lotus team? Jennifer just messaged to tell me that she's on an airplane, so that's why she's not able to join us today. All right. Then I still think with me over to the Venus team. Much like last week, the Venus team is pretty heads down also on FVM implementation, but also specifically on providing support to the new Venus cluster as well as the Venus market module. They're working on several prototypes for expanding market capabilities, and the Venus cluster has now been updated to support snap deals, which is great. Again, as before, the team is working on releasing an SDK for the FVM, customer support for the Venus market module, and file drive testing continues to be in progress. Also, as we'll discuss in just a moment, the beneficiary address FIP that the Venus team authored originally is currently in last call, which is really exciting for the team as well. They have a lot of work going on, and it's across a lot of different areas within the Filecoin ecosystem at the moment. So it increasingly seeing the Venus team pop up in different portions of the space. Any questions which you'd like me to pass over to the Venus team? All right, very quiet meeting today. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that alongside Lotus's new update format in Slack and the Forest team's update format in their GitHub wiki, the Venus team is also organizing a lot of materials on Slack and through the new Venus cluster website, which, like last week, I'll add to the notes and I think sort of compile in one place. So if you want to quickly reference what other teams are doing, you can do that as well, since there are some new update formats being put out there. All right. Next up for FIPS and network governance overall, as we know, FIP 27, which is that change deal proposal label type FIP, did pass. It was accepted. So we're excited that that will be formally included as part of the V16 network upgrade. Currently, FIP 29, as mentioned, this is the beneficiary address change for storage providers. This is currently in last call, and storage providers in particular have been overwhelmingly supportive of this FIP, since it provides a lot of functionality for any future market lending or other financialization tools that they're interested in using to support storage providing. So excited again that Stephen was the author of this FIP, and just let everyone know the last call period will finalize next Friday. So one more week if you want to review, highly recommended. But do know that this FIP in particular will not be included in the network V16 upgrade. Certainly a future one, although it's not confirmed yet which one that will be. We also do have one new FIP, which unfortunately I didn't add in the title, but you will know it by the end of this call because Will is presenting it. And it is the Filecoin Indexer Advertising Protocol FIP, which was just pushed into the repo yesterday morning, I believe. Any questions about FIPs at the moment? All right. Then over to network security. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce Parth, who just joined the call. Parth, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys, I'm Parth, and I just joined the foundation on February. And I just graduated from university in December, and I had a nudge for security since like 2019. So this was a pretty, and I'm a very like pro Web3, pro crypto. So this was a best place for me to join. So that's why I joined. And the one thing that I love about this foundation is the people that I work with. Like they're one of the finest people I've ever worked with. So I'm very fortunate, and nice to meet you guys. And we'll hopefully be chatting more soon.
That was nice. Thank you, Parth. Yeah, welcome to the call. Yep, Parth is located in Seattle, in the United States. So he is on Pacific Standard Time if you need to schedule a meeting. And Parth is going to be overseeing the Bug Bounty Board, as well as working with Jennifer and some other people within Protocol Labs to help triage some of the ongoing audits that are currently underway as well. So we mentioned this last time that Dudley has left the foundation. And so in order to make sure that his workload is covered in the interim, Parth is also going to be assisting, as I mentioned, some of the others who provide a little bit more information last week as well. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Parth, Jennifer, Ayush, and we can triage it from there.
Definitely feel free to contact me on Slack anytime you want.
Cool. Thank you, Parth. All right. Any questions? All right. Then we just keep on going. All right. So the next thing to quickly update everyone on is the Skyard Network V16 timeline, which I think you all know is currently a little bit up in the air. So I've updated our tentative timeline with some soft dates. These are not fully Jennifer approved or confirmed. So please know that these are very tentative and still likely to change. I think given the status of the FVM audits and the way that all of you are pretty integrally involved in all of those, you're very well aware of sort of the changing constraints around this timeline, and know that dates are going to remain a little bit flexible until we do get closer to all of the CalNet syncs. So again, we'll continue to update you. If you have any questions or uncertainties about the timeline at any one moment in time, do feel free to reach out and we can kind of coordinate offline as well. But do know that we have officially pushed the date. It's going to happen early June at the earliest. And as before, there's certainly no way that we're going to be pulling it closer in time. So not to worry too much about work and upgrade capacities. And as your team is working on different levels of implementation in preparation for the FVM, do feel free to continue to coordinate in various developer channels so that we can make sure any changing work constraints or needs from your end are accounted for as this timeline continues to fluctuate a little bit. Any questions? Wow, you can tell everyone's traveling. It's oddly quiet. Sorry, Will, usually people are quite talkative. All right.
I guess the one thing I wonder is if, oh, go for it, Lee.
Go ahead, Will, please.
So, yeah.
Do we expect this, there's a fairly large number of FIPS that are accompanying this. Are we going to expect those to land before the network upgrade? And are we going to see those sort of happen over the next month or two, basically?
In terms of like FIP approval or in terms of, yeah, great question. So FIP 27 has been approved. FIPs 30, 31, and 32, as you may know, we're thinking of as sort of the FVM series of FIPs. So they are independent proposals, but they must all be passed in order for the FVM to be fully implemented. I have been told that the final thing we're really waiting on right now is approval for those gas parameters in FIP 32. I have been told that these will be confirmed by this afternoon, and I did see Ayush pushed a change into the repost. They may, as of just now, be there. If that's the case, we will start that last call process immediately. But yeah, all four of these FIPs do need to be accepted, preferably before we hit that CalNet upgrade period. Yeah. And just as like additional background, the reason for such a tentative timeline, since usually we all come to consensus, we agree on a timeline and we implement against that timeline without any additional changes, really has to do with the status of the audit and really the scope of the changes being implemented during this upgrade. Lee, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have any information on the butterfly upgrade. So that would give us an idea on what's the tentative timeline here for calibration and then going to mainnet, how much time we might need, and also that depends on the audit that's currently going on. So would love to know if there's any information there.
Yeah, so I do not have any information, but Jennifer is going to come up with a proposal, update the test plan, and propose that at the second meeting today. So we will have an answer for you by the end of the day. And I can like flag it for you since it usually takes me about a week to turn around the recordings and meeting notes. In terms of communicating these changes, obviously, Jennifer has been taking the lead on proposing dates and sort of coordinating needs around the audit. But it is not solely her decision to make, so we can be flexible. If you have a preferred date in mind that works best for your team, or sort of a threshold at which you cannot plan for the butterfly net prior to a certain date, you're welcome to share. I can pass that along and we can sort of collaboratively work towards a newly updated tentative timeline. But I don't have a certain date. I think, what is it exactly? April 21st that I put in here. Yeah, that's today, right? So obviously not happening.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, just, so that we get a better idea, and I think once we know where butterfly stands, we will know where calibration and then mainnet will stand. Yeah, sounds good.
Sure. And if you feel like, I know there's been like a little bit of ambiguity. I too have been uncertain about the schedule as I am now. And I think it's just because of how quickly things are changing. What we can try and do if it would be helpful is like a standardized, every 2 or 3 days in the implementers channel, we can coordinate current thinking around timelines just to make sure everyone has sort of a up-to-date reference point. If you think that's something that would be helpful, we can do that, and I can bug Jennifer to help put it into place. But yeah, sorry, I don't have more info for you.
Let me jump in. Yeah, definitely. It would be really great to have an up-to-date schedule of all the network upgrade timeline. So we can also, well, everyone who is interested can join the update and see what will be the results from CryptNet and other networks.
Yeah. Sure. And individual teams are also welcome to propose their own preferred timelines as well. So as before, we can wait for Jennifer to give her preferred updated test plan. But if you do have preferences, or you're currently tracking a sprint session that puts CalibNet on May 20th, hypothetically, right? Do let us know. It's an important part of that sort of collaborative planning process, even if it's changeable. Oh, anyone else? Sorry. All right. So as we kind of wait on the network timeline for some more information, again, it's going to be in that second meeting today. So if you can join, you're welcome. Otherwise, as before, we will always update everyone publicly in other channels as well. But if there are no other questions for now, I think we'll hand it over to you to walk us through your newly proposed FIP on the indexer advertisement protocol.
Sure. So this is probably a little off from where we've seen most of the FIPs so far. We're not directly dealing with the consensus of the chain here at all. But this is impacting a bunch of how the market side of Filecoin is developing. And so in particular, what we're adding here is a recommendation for how storage providers can provide information about what content they have. Right, so the markets in its core form that's existed so far in the protocol just sort of manages making deals. But the contents within those deals so far have been basically opaque. And in some cases that's great, but we also have a bunch of use cases where we want to know what is on nodes so that we can then actually make retrievals, not just to the client who stored the data, but to other clients as well. So there needs to be some sort of discovery process for the subset of data where you want to make that data available and sort of build a retrieval market and a larger set of retrieval activity around it. So the basic place that we've ended up in sort of our first pass of this design, and so what the implementation that Lotus is starting to have on by default in the 1.15.1 release, and that we're hoping to sort of say is a reasonable baseline here. Is what's encoded in this indexer advertisement protocol. And it adds sort of a couple things into the markets module. The first is that as new deals are added into markets and are seen by the DAG store, and so become available for retrieval, that new data will trigger a gossip sub announcement under a new indexer topic saying that the node has more content that's available for retrieval, and a pointer to the market's libp2p endpoint where indexers that want to learn about that data can go and reach it. And this flows through the current Lotus and Filecoin gossip subnetwork under this new topic. And then secondly, under the same markets endpoint that storage providers have for storage and retrieval for online deals, there's a new type of voucher. So this is the Go data transfer, or I guess more generally data transfer vouchers, which is normally how you would handle payments in data transfer. But you can now, when you're making a request to the markets of these nodes and their markets endpoint, you can ask them instead with this other type of request to give you the index data of basically the list of SIDs that they are making available for retrieval at that point in time. That list of what content is available for retrieval is structured as itself a chain of data. And so it is a set of announcement objects that point to the previous one and forms a graph. And so the indexers will pull this tag, this graph of data that basically is sort of the, I made this content available, and then more recently than that, I made this content available. And then you can also have announcements that say I'm retracting and no longer making this previous data available. And that's all still just, SID addressed immutable chunks of data. And so the indexers will periodically, either when they see these gossip sub announcements of new data or just on a fixed schedule, they can come to the markets and get the new data and sync back to the previous head that they'd gotten the last time. So they'll get the deltas. Likewise, if a deal is made to multiple providers, the list of SIDs in a deal will be the same. So the indexer only has to get it from one of the providers. It doesn't have to duplicate it and pull that list of SIDs from all of them. But more generally, we find that this list of SIDs so far has actually not been too bad for most of the deals that we've got. There's a range of how large your blocks of data are that get packed into the cars and put into the deal for data that's in proper car format. But in general, we found that these data transfers of individual deals is quite low for the overhead that's associated with providing that index information. So we don't expect that to be a burden for most providers. So this is extending the online deal making protocol as it exists. And it's adding this discovery mechanism for how you find what SIDs a provider has. That feeds into network indexers. There are a set of these running. You can get to the one that my team is running at sid.contact, cid.contact is a web page. It'll let you search a SID and see who has it. We've got a few different downstream additions or clients that are trying to consume this data and use it to find what content is on the network already. One of these is that content that is marked by providers as being servable over BitSwap will already appear to IPFS users. So IPFS users who look for SIDs just in their normal IPFS browsing, any providers who publish in this protocol, but also note that they have BitSwap, which is not what any of the default Filecoin clients, storage providers do right now, but which will be trialing as an alpha with Boost later as an opt-in thing, will become available to IPFS users. But secondly, we have bridges. So there's a project in application research called Estuary, or Estuary has a project called Auto Retrieve, which will fetch content to make it back available when it doesn't have it in a local cache. And that will also be plugging into the same mechanism for doing that translation to bridge content for retrievals. And we'll use the index to know who has it. And we expect more integrations in the future as well. I think that's the basics of what's going on here. Happy to take questions.
If you do have questions, feel free just to pop in.
More questions.
Maxim, I think you're, oh, go ahead. You're cutting out a bit.
Yeah, my question, can the discovery protocol be used as a possible?
Can the discovery proposal be used as a DOS thing? Was that the worry?
Maxim, maybe you could ask
question
your question in the chat.
Supporting the protocol, for example. Yeah, you're right.
I guess I can go a little bit more into this discovery protocol. Yeah, so the additional gossip sub messages that are coming through, we did put in a validator of these gossip sub to lock them down, we believe basically as tightly as any of the other ones going through the gossip sub mechanism. And essentially the rate that they're limited at is so you know which Filecoin node originated the message because they're signed by I believe the markets libp2p host, which is delegated from the on-chain Lotus or Filecoin node as its markets on-chain. So nodes who are getting one of these index announcement gossip messages can check and see which Lotus or which Filecoin implementation node originated the message from. And then they can rate limit those messages and both expect that that message needs to be parsable, that it's unique, distinct announcement of new content from previous ones in their cache, and that it's rate limited at the rate of deals that have been sealed and confirmed on chain. So that you can't publish more than one of these per deal that you accept. So that limits it enough that we're not too worried about denial of services. The expectation is a node that's like sort of doing this catch up and the initial migration where they're going through all of their currently on-chain deals and adding them into an index and suddenly making them available is not going to publish one of these gossip messages for each deal all at once. And so there is sort of a limitation on bursts where if it suddenly finds itself updating its index rapidly, which is going to happen in these catch-up cases, it's only going to send one gossip. It's not going to like keep sending them for each deal. So the nodes will self-regulate as well, and that's expected. So while you've got sort of a general limit, right, that's around that, you've also got like a burst limit where you can't save up all of these and then like sort of send them all in a burst to overwhelm network resources. And you also can't like trickle them out because each index has to be sort of a recent thing. So if you're playing catch up, you don't get to like use that to somehow abuse it. So we think those are the two cases, and we think we're reasonably safe against DOS things.
Maxim, does that answer your question, or do you have any follow-ups? Okay. Well, and I guess the question that I have for you is that, so because of the structure of the protocol, it appears like for this FIP, different from ones we mostly have, we would not require a network upgrade in order to implement, but instead we would just expect standardization across all of the implementations so that their storage providers could continue to send messages. I obviously need to get this confirmed. I usually ask Ayush to take a look, and I know he hasn't had a chance to review the STIP yet. But if that's the case, do you have a timeline by which you expect sort of outstanding sort of development and refinement of this draft to be complete?
So on the first point, yes, I think that's correct, that there's not a network update that or any sort of consensus change that is associated with this. I think the one thing that we probably do want to agree on standardization as a baseline is this, what the validation logic for these gossip sub messages, because those are flowing through all of the Filecoin gossip implementations in their direct implementation. So they should have a similar sort of acceptance protocol where even if the node itself is not providing indexing, it should be willing to flow through this new type of gossip message. And then other than that, it's really just a standardization or a recommendation for the way that a node would advertise that it has content available for online retrieval. And then timeline, I suspect we're not going to do much next week, so it'll be a couple weeks, but we could have something for within a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think that the timeline is purely around. I think there's certainly no rush. And as long as you don't feel like there's a rush to complete the FIP and get it into that last call period, then we also benefit from, you'll have some implementers who maybe have a little bit more free time on their hands to take a look. So
absolutely. And let me get a link to the FIP for you.
Yeah, thank you. Lee, there's no FIP number yet because we haven't merged the draft. But I don't expect this proposal to change drastically, and it's near completion in some others, so we can add one for reference.
But it is discussion 337 in Filecoin project FIPs.
Cool. Thanks, Will. And again, if you have more questions, obviously you can reach out to Will. Hung Hao, his colleague, will also be joining the second meeting today to walk us through the same information. So if a question pops up in a few hours, you're welcome to join that call as well and ask it then. I think we're going to switch onto our second presentation, if that's all right with everyone. But Will, really thank you so much for joining and walking us through this and for submitting a really complete and very thorough FIP draft so far. Cool. All right, then it's over to Maxim for his team's node state compaction proposal. Maxim, I think you want to share your screen. Is that correct? Looks like...
Yes, but it will not be me. It will be Ruslan.
Okay, great. Ruslan, let me make you a co-host so you can do that. All right, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Today we want to present you with a concept we've been thinking about in Falco team for some time now. The concept itself is pretty simple and well known. Transfer state diffs instead of full states when needed. Git is a great example of this approach being used, as it has to address the issue of transferring big amount of duplicated data, where the core changes are usually smaller than the full new state. Transferring diffs instead of whole state enables Git to save network bandwidth and disk usage of the clients. The challenge that lies ahead of diff algorithm used in Git is that there is no general structure in text that are stored using Git, though you can apply a simple heuristic. You can split text into lines of words and treat them as basic units of textual data. Then you can easily diff them. Filecoin is similar to Git in a way that it also has to transfer data from node to node, though Filecoin is different from Git in a way the data is structured. Filecoin state consists of primitive types, like integers, trace, from which virtual machine state is built. Virtual machine state is an actor stable, where every actor has its own data structure. If we wanted to, we could have traversed Filecoin state tree and tried to find a diff between two given state trees. The question is, how could we use this approach in Filecoin? Transactions themselves can be used as basic unit to make a diff between two states, though transaction or message in Filecoin terms are quite complex to roll back or apply. You have to execute a virtual machine actor for that, do some crypto work, and so on. Transactions change state, and this state change can be used to replace the changes on other node without the virtual machine. We can target the states we want to get diffs without any limitations. It's obvious this approach for transferring changes is less bandwidth intensive. From this point, it makes sense to talk about Indepth example. An experiment was conducted on mainnet snapshot. For it, we chose only top-level actors HAMT. It's big enough and its elements, HAMT and tuple, are used in other actor states. Actor-specific states objects were not included, only actor info. In chosen height, there was 1.3000 node objects, which take 150 megabytes, and 1.7 million actors, which take 100 megabytes. Object traversal took 2 seconds. Now this table shows for a given number of epochs, shows changes for a given number of epochs. It's diff traversal time and encoded size for each method. Looking at the table, we see that size is decreasing as we go down. So each method tries to improve on the results of the previous one. So like 56,000, 1,000, and 400. Diff traversal is also faster than 2 seconds of full traversal from previous slides. So each method spends less time than the full traversal. We will describe each of the methods in the next slides. HMT is a tree. It consists of nodes. Each node has case and values. For this example, we consider that green colored nodes are colored values are values that were changed. We can just copy all new objects. So like if we have initial state HMT and this tree, we just take the second. From the previous example, that will take 150 megabytes. Let's color nodes yellow if it contains changed value. So this one, or if it has a yellow child. So this node too, because it has this yellow node. These nodes do not include unchanged nodes, the white ones. So this, taking these three nodes, reduces, taking yellow changed nodes, reduces size to 50 megabytes. We can see that some values didn't change, but they are still copied because they belong to an enclosing node. These values, which are color red, are just overhead and can be omitted. Let's copy changed values instead of nodes. This can be done efficiently by using HMT structure. Actors HMT uses integers as keys. These integers can be efficiently encoded with RLE. Even if keys are not integers, RLE can be used to reuse the keys. This step reduces size to 1.3 megabytes. Not all tuple fields were changed, and they are overhead too. We can omit them, but we must remember which fields were omitted. This can be stored in a bit mask. This reduces size to 420 kilobytes in our example. This method relies on knowledge of state tree structure. So this method may not work after introduction of programmable actors if their state structure is ambiguous, mutable, or not known. Also, CPU and memory consumption may be used as a denial of service attack vector, like any other protocol. And last, here are the links for articles about the Git and for code used during the experiment. Thanks for listening. Feel free to ask questions.
Thank you, Rustam. Yeah, it's definitely worth having a dialogue because it's a complex subject to discuss and to show.
Ruslan or Maxim, will either of you be able to attend our second meeting today to present to the Venus and Lotus teams as well, or no?
I definitely will not be able to. I'm not sure about Ruslan, but I'm pretty sure he will also be sleeping at the time. We can schedule a different meeting though, if needed.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Everyone will also be directed to rewatch your presentation, but I will not be able to give them an adequate overview of it. So.
Yeah, the presentation itself will be shared, so everyone can have at least an idea of what is the subject.
Great. And we'll share the links to your test repos also. Any other questions for Ruslan or Maxim? Right, it sounds like no. I think folks may need to digest the proposal and review the code also. So we'll make sure that everyone who was unable to attend this morning's meeting, since it was sort of a smaller meeting, that they're able to review this one, or as you mentioned, Maxim, you can present again if you'd like. But thanks again so much for putting all of this together. Great, I will. Any last minute questions? If not, this is the end of our meeting for today. All right. Then thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks, if not later this afternoon. All right, bye.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys. See you.